going to talk about intact grains. Intact grains are a little bit different than whole grains, which you're probably more familiar with, in that intact grains still retain their bran and germ. So intact grains cannot be ground down into a flour. They are not an intact grain at that point. Some examples of intact grains are brown rice, farro, barley, and bulgur wheat. So bulgur wheat is actually a little bit processed, but it still does count as an intact grain. And then quinoa and wild rice. And so these are actually not grains either. They are grass seeds, but they still count because they have a tremendous amount of fiber and they are not ground into flour. And you might note that quinoa is available in the white, as we have here, and also in red quinoa and black quinoa. As a reminder, intact grains digest more slowly and provide many vitamins and minerals and fibers that are lost when grains are processed. So while processed grains can be very high in added sodium, intact grains are basically sodium free. Replacing processed grains with intact grains can help lower sodium and increase fiber in our diet. And so one thing that you should know is that there's basically the same cooking process for most of these grains, but they have different ratios of liquid needed to cook them. And brown rice would be 2.5 to 1 ratio of water to brown rice. The quinoa is 2 to 1, and the barley is 3 to 1. So you'd need 3 parts water and 1 part barley to prepare that. This is barley, and I've already picked through it to check for debris or rocks or other little random things that should not be in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to toast this in a dry pan so that it brings out an additional rich, deep flavor. So you do not have to toast your grains before cooking, but this just is an extra step to provide extra flavor without adding fat, salt, or sugar. So my pan is preheated to a medium high, and I'll just pour the grains right in. And I will stir these periodically through the toasting process, and I'll know they're done whenever they smell nutty and toasty and they are lightly browned. Okay, so hopefully you can see that this barley is nice and toasty, and you can see that it's turning brown, and I'm just continuing to stir because the pan holds heat and it's continuing to toast. And unfortunately you can't smell the nice toasty nutty smell of the barley, but that's one of the indicators that it has reached that toasted point that you're looking for. But I do think that you can see that it's much browner than it was when we started. So a simple preparation for brown rice, which is a whole grain, or excuse me, an intact grain, it's a 2 to 1 ratio. So I have 4 cups of water here. I have 2 in the pot and 2 that I'm pouring in. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in 2 cups of long grain brown rice. Turn the heat up to high. Just give it a little stir. You do not want to agitate grains too much because that brings out the starch and can make them gummy. So this is just gonna come to a boil, and then I'm gonna come back and turn the heat down to a simmer, put the lid on it, and let it cook for about 25 minutes. So our rice has come to a boil, and I'm just gonna give it a quick stir. You don't want to stir it too much because, again, you don't want to release those starches and make it gummy. Turn the heat down to low, replace the lid, and cook for about 25 minutes until the rice is tender and all the liquid is absorbed. So our brown rice has simmered for about 25 minutes, and you can see that the grains are fluffy and separate. So you just might want to fluff that with a fork. Again, avoid stirring it because you don't want to activate those starches and make your rice gummy. But this can continue to sit in the pot for just a little bit for the rice to cool and some of that steam to be absorbed. But other than that, it's ready to eat. Bulgur wheat is an especially easy intact grain preparation. The ratio is 2 to 1 water to grain, and I have 2 cups of water that I've already brought to a boil. I'll pour in the 1 cup of bulgur wheat, give that a quick stir, and turn the heat down to low. Replace the lid It's already coming back to a simmer. Place the lid and let it simmer for about 12 minutes or until all of the water is absorbed. Okay, so our bulgur wheat has simmered for 12 to 15 minutes, and you can see that the grains are separated, all the liquid is absorbed, and it is now ready to eat.